From Newsweek, Chinese ship suspected of undersea cable sabotage detained in NATO lake. This is where things get pretty crazy. So already Europe is preparing for World War III, they say. They've mobilized 800,000 NATO troops. They're giving out pamphlets in some Baltic states saying, prepare for war, here's how you need to do it. Russia has, of course, updated their nuclear doctrine to lower the threshold. Then we saw 2 undersea cables severed. We got a great call from one of our members last night who said, is this possibly a precursor to a larger escalation of war? Because destruction of communications tends to be the first move. Now they have detained a Chinese vessel, which, let's hope it's not the case, could implicate China involving them in a greater conflict. Newsweek says a Chinese vessel has been implicated in what has been described as the sabotage of undersea telecom cables in the Baltic Sea. International concerns surround the cutting of the 730-mile Sea Lion 1 cable connecting Finland and Germany and the 130-mile link between Sweden and Lithuania on Monday. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius described the incidents as hybrid actions, while the Swedish and Lithuanian counterparts said they were deeply concerned.
Is it okay if I go for a tinkle?
It is absolutely
Because I don't
okay.
care about all about this.
Well, all right.
Excuse me.
Then I'll ask Elad. World War III.
Fortunately,
Don't close the door. Okay, good.
I believe, fortunately,
He closed the door. You were saying?
I don't think so. Not in the near term. I think a lot of people, Putin's holding off on making any moves until Trump gets into office. But no, I think this is just some asymmetric sort of warfare that we will have a tough time, giving a like-kind response against. I don't think we're going to go inside and start damaging cables. Or
What other weird thing happened?
No. But I mean, if China is involved in assisting Russia with severing or destroying communications, it has huge implications.
But it's one of those...
It very well may be a Chinese ship dragging an anchor, I guess, is what their argument was. I hope that's the case, but I'm not convinced.
So I'm actually more concerned with the change in Russia's nuclear policy than with this communication thing, because this is possibly an accident, possibly something that wasn't intentional. Whereas the official change in Russia's nuclear policy, that is specifically in response to Ukraine using U.S.-made weapons, likely using U.S. intelligence to help to the strike. These are very accurate weapons, so it's possibly also the U.S. helping select targets. In any other context, the United States, if it were a context where someone did this to the United States, it would 100% be looked at as the country that the attack came from and where the weapons came from. It would be considered an act of war. I was listening to Glenn Greenwald and Tucker Carlson on the way in today, and they were talking about how the politics in Russia are very different from here, and that Putin, if he doesn't, that he has to remain, he has to look a certain way to the Russian people. Like, the Russians and Americans are not the same people. The culture is very different, and the politics are also very different. As much as Putin does have a pretty solid grip on the country, there is a possibility of him being overthrown. There's a possibility of him being killed, just like he likely tossed that dancer out of a building today, or not. I'm sorry, not today. A couple days ago or whatever. So I mean, it's that kind of politics is a real thing, and Putin's not insulated from that entirely. It's less likely that he's going to be targeted, but it's possible that he could be killed. So he might be he could end up being in a situation where if he looks weak,
he has to continue the war.
Yeah, if he looks weak, then he gets, he could get off. And so if that's the case, I mean, he might be in a position where he has to escalate the war, especially if there's more than one strike. Like, this strike may be able to be overlooked, but not continued.
You don't think potential Chinese involvement is substantially more worrying?
What a lovely toilet.
Of course.
It's great, right?
You've got the most remarkable latrine.
Sam Cedar broke it.
That doesn't,
and I'm not trying to rag the guy.
Doesn't surprise me.
He said on the show, and I was surprised he brought it up. And I was like, I can't. He said, sorry about your toilet. And I was like, okay.
No, I've got to tell you, I live in a 22-room travertine marble mansion in Los Angeles. It belongs to a friend of mine. And we've very it's pink marble and it's very finely appointed, but we don't have a toilet as nice as it is. It's marvelous, but we don't have a toilet as nice as yours.
It was like a couple $100.
Tim, I think the thing here is plausible deniability. that's coming from the Chinese. So they could say, hey, we didn't, we used an anchor to do it. And then like same with hitting boats in the Philippines. Like we didn't do this on purpose. Like
I get it. My point for Phil was I understand what you were saying about Putin and all that stuff. My concern is if there's insinuated or evident Chinese involvement in conflict in Eastern Europe, we're overnight. It's what gradually then suddenly boom, World War III.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, if there is going to be any kind of kinetic action, it is likely to be in the interim before President Trump is inaugurated. So
there's a pattern of sabotage in the Baltic Sea because this is the same place the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah, if the Nord Stream didn't get us into World War III, I don't know about some cables.
This is
yeah, but Germany accused Ukraine of doing that.
Yeah, and I think there was evidence that eventually came out that
it was some Ukrainian guy who blew up Nord Stream.
Likely with
Putin say we did
U.S.
it
involvement. I doubt they could do it without U.S. involvement.
Germany accused a Ukrainian guy of blowing up Nord Stream too. And so when that happened, I was shocked and I said, this country is an enemy of the United States. They're actively trying to drag us into World War III, bombing a pipeline to our major allies in Europe. The left removed that context and says Tim Pool called Ukraine an enemy. And I'm like, yeah, why don't you include the part where Germany has accused them of bombing the gas pipeline that's supplying fuel to Western Europe? Right. That's not an act of allyship for the United States. That's blowing up our energy resources.
To make the argument, I do think it was within the American interest to not have a pipeline going from Russia to Germany because that allows their leverage, by the way.
So your argument is that NATO, that the United States violated NATO. You're saying that the United States acted with subterfuge to damage NATO nations that we are allied with.
I think the United States definitely had knowledge. The reason why this war started is in part because of Russia and Germany and so many Europeans are dependent on Russian oil. Trump has actually talked about this when he was president in the past, and now the fruits are coming to bear. Leverage that Russia holds over the Europeans is all through gas, and that's why they're less likely to get involved.
But the issue is the U.S. has been trying to offset Russian gas supply into Europe to lower the costs. Destroying a pipeline increases how much Russia can charge through Gazprom, through the Ukrainian pipelines. So bombing of Nord Stream 2 helped Russia maintain control, and it created a higher priority and more important on the existing gas lines they already control.
I think it forces Russians to now sell oil on pennies on the dollar to the Chinese now because they are unable to export as much oil and gas to the Europeans. That's what we want to force them to do.
Why would they have to sell pennies on the dollar? Now this means that...
Well, they have been to China.
I know, because they have to make money and they're under sanctions. But Germany is going to have a harder time pulling in natural gas now with Nord Stream getting bombed. And Russia's going to say, we're 20% of the supply. You got to pay... I understand they're both
consequences for Germany deciding to make their gas and oil reliant on Russia. It's totally their fault, and they're dealing with the consequences of poor political decisions at their top echelon from a decade ago.
Sounds like your view is, I'm not saying you're wrong, is that Germany is a vassal of the United States.
Europe, a lot of Europe.
They're an ally. They're under our domain.
They're not an ally if we're bombing their energy sources. If you think the United States directed Ukraine to bomb
Germany
Nord
Stream, Germany has aspired for some time to occupy the position. And I think it's an unbreakable partnership, like blacks in the Democrat Party between the UK and the US. And Germany has sometimes sought to occupy that position. Never made much progress there, but it's certainly true that they have wished that they had that relationship.
But again, I'm not saying you're wrong. It would be that these European states are basically vassals of the United States. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's actually probably
I think it's part of a larger partnership.
Well, I mean, look,
that's the nice
anything that any NATO member to some degree could be considered a vassal of the United States because the United States is funding their defense, or at the very
right. But
the U.S. is the state.
But I mean, like, you act out of line and we blow up your gas pipeline.
That's every country on the planet Earth is therefore a vassal state. You step out of line and we're blowing you up.
You're true with that. But if they are acting underneath the orders and instructions of NATO and the United States, and then if they get out of line, we bomb them, that treaty signifies that they are a subjugated nation.
Yeah, most of our allies are the junior partners.
To be fair, we've occupied Germany since World War II.
We liberated.
Yes, liberated.
Liberated Germany. Yes.
There are theories that NATO was behind the 20 years of...
Eisenhower really liberated with all the millions of Germans he murdered.
I think we did liberate all of Europe, and the reason why we shouldn't pull back on that allyship that we have with them is because we don't want to have to come and rescue Europe again in another 40 years when they screw everything up between their balance of power.
Yeah, definitely Europe, where the problems are right now.
Yeah.
Well, so we're going to wake up to World War III, or what's going to happen?
No, everybody's holding off till Trump gets in at least, and then
No,
from there things will be calmer.
Yeah, they'll suck it up. Even if Biden kills, a bunch of people he shouldn't, they'll suck it up because they know Trump's coming in and they know there's no point.
There's a fear, though, that the current
happen.
administration, I wouldn't call it Biden, is trying to escalate things to make it impossible for Trump to de-escalate.
Blinken hates Russia.
It's never going to.
Yeah.
It's never going to be impossible for Trump to de-escalate. Okay, Trump is a generationally historic figure who perhaps there hasn't been somebody. I don't think there's been anybody since maybe even Lincoln who has so completely and entirely embodied what it means to be America, whose fate is entwined with America.
Teddy Roosevelt?
Who has become...
Come on now.
Modern day neocon. That's what they'd call him.
right.
If Teddy Roosevelt was around right now, they'd call him a neocon.
But think about the manner in which think about the manner in which Trump's fate is entwined with America's. He didn't just say, "I feel your pain" to his voters. He took most of it on. He shouldered it by bearing the brunt of the attacks from the left, by getting all of the lawfare, by becoming Trump is a shorthand for everything that the Democrats hate about Republican voters, right?
An avatar.
Exactly.
About America.
Exactly. And Trump became, and this is what I was trying to get at when I was on last time when we were talking about DeSantis and Trump, okay? I was proven so spectacularly correct because Trump is now indistinguishable from America. And what was so brilliant about his stint at McDonald's was that it combined the eccentricity that you expect from an avuncular figure, because he's gone from daddy that he was in 2016 to more like pater patriae, which father of the nation, more like an avuncular kind of
mythological.
Yes, exactly. Trump has become mythological. You read my tweet, didn't you? Trump has become something greater than just an elected official. He's become a stand-in for what it means to be America, and so
he's going to be like he's a part of Americana now.
Exactly, and when he does this McDonald's thing, and you have the little you have the eccentricities like untouched by human hands, because that's of course what he worries about because he's like a germaphobe, whatever. But he's also there. He's there as the America. That's how everybody sees America, is powerful, slightly ridiculous, but awesome. Right? That's pretty much how everyone sees America, right? Strong, a bit silly, but ultimately pretty great, Or at least that's the best version of America, the best version of America that's ever been, and now we're getting a little bit back to that. There's no world leader. I mean, no one is going to war with the guy that walked across the demilitarized zone and shook hands with Kim Jong-un. Nobody is going to war with the guy that Putin fears, because he knows that Trump will push the button, right? Nobody's going to war with Trump. Nobody, and that means that nobody's going to go to war with a president-elect Trump either. And I think I don't think it's going to happen.
This is what I like about Trump.
I don't believe it.
There's I was talking about a business deal I was in about 7 or 8 years ago, and what's traditional in the industry is they said
with Russia.
No, I'm just kidding. It was with a New York-based network.
I'm joking.
And the way they say that these typical deals work is, and you know this probably in Hollywood, they give you a contract. They call it boilerplate. It stabs a knife in your back, and you've got to hire a lawyer to go through it and rip out all the evil.
And it's not just that, but there's a hierarchy of knives waiting to stab you in the back at every moment. So if you dodge this one, the other one gets you.
So I go into this meeting. They say, "Here's what we want to do. It's fantastic. We'll email you the contract." I say, "Sounds good." I look at it, I read it, I laugh, and I say, "Are you nuts?" And then I respond to the email saying, "I appreciate it, but this contract is not serious. It hands over IP. It hands over ownership. That's a ridiculous thing for you to have asked me for, and amend it." They said, "Send it to your lawyers, redline it, and send it back." I responded with, "If you think you're going to put a $5,000 legal bill on me to try and do a business deal, I will not be entering business with someone like you." And I said, "Kindly F off."
But this is what everyone else has done. I mean, look at the Wilkes Brothers system, okay?
But right, my point is simply this. Sorry, just to finish. This is what I like about Trump so much, and when you say he would push the button. There are very few people that I've met that I respect who would be willing to say, I will crash my own car before I would ever bend my knee to you. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is the guy who says to Putin, "I will nuke you before I let you win." And Putin's like, he might.
Yeah. So this is called the madman doctrine. And the Madman Doctrine was most notably deployed by Nixon. Okay, and Nixon's thought was, if I make people think that I'm crazy and I'll do pretty much anything, people will be too afraid to start SHI, you know what. And he was right about that, and it was very effective. Madman theory, or the Madman Doctrine, is why Trump behaves like he does, which a lot of his critics don't understand, which is, if you think, and I guess I'm a student of this too, if you think somebody will do literally anything, like you cannot predict how they will retaliate, and for the slightest of perceived insults, they might retaliate with massive, brutal punishment, which is typically how I like to operate. Mm-hmm. You just don't go there. It's not worth it. Like it's just there's just no point risking that, right? But to your point about the contracts, interesting thing happening in media at the moment. All of the people who took those deals are beginning to fall and fade. Yeah. Nobody talks about Ben Shapiro anymore. Candace Owens has gone completely crazy. All of those the people who took advantage of the censored and the cancelled in 2017, who kind of, basically, you might say, stole their audiences. Those guys, you know, the Wilkes brothers and the, you know, whatever. So the Wilkes brothers are Texan billionaires who have funded most of the worst people in conservative media. You know, the sort of people who are rabid Zionists, even by Republican standards.
Drop some names.
And well, I just did. So the Daily Wire, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro.
What do you think's crazy about Candace Owens? Rabid Zionist, I mean.
Well, she's gone the opposite way now because she's left, and because she was. It's a bit more complicated. I'll get to that. So she started off that way. She's a creation of the Daily Wire, okay, and she started off a Zionist. All right. That's when they were funding her. Now they're not. You understand the difference? Okay. So,
but you called her crazy. So what is she crazy about now?
Well, because she's gone off the board into conspiracy theory because she no longer has a producer and she started to make her own decisions, which is, you know, always a mistake for somebody who's never read a book. But,
fact check, true. Candace.
She's never forgiven me because I roasted her in front of many of actually all of the richest Jews in Palm Beach.
We do got to go to super chats.
Sure, I'll be quick. I'll be quick. The thing that's happening in media that's interesting, I think, is that my interruption. All of the people who took those kinds of deals are falling or fading, right? The people who gave their IP, gave their whatever. So if you think of it like this, you have the Mercer ecosystem, which is Bannon, Breitbart, me, Tucker, and Trump. And then you have the Wilkes Brothers ecosystem, which is the Daily Wire and all of the kind of like hyper-Zionist Prager, right? Those people are all kind of like faltering at the moment, the people who took those kinds of deals. And the people who didn't are starting to like spark up a little bit. And in this, and as we're, you know, so the reason Candace is in the trouble she's in is she got lured out of the safe environs of the Daily Wire, independent, and then lured into a variety of crazy positions by Nick Fuentes, who told her, "We got you. I'm going to give you access to my gigantic audience of like," and it turned out there was no gigantic audience because he's botted to buggery. Just like all of the other Wilkes Brothers entities, they fake it till they make it. Ben Shapiro did this. She did this. Nick Fuentes is attempting to do it just without the money, which is going to be a very, very nasty end for him. But she's been lured out of this. Point being this. There's an opening now. There is a huge market opportunity now for people who said no. And I did the same thing. I was brought into WME and they gave me the same offer they gave you. And I said, no. There's a huge market opportunity now as all of those people who astroturfed their way to supposed fame, to like #1 podcasts, none of their listeners are real. None of their their advertisers are not getting what they paid for. The listeners aren't real. The viewers aren't real. The book purchasers aren't real. All their books are. So I don't know if you know this, but when you write a book, so the books that I write are like actually popular for politicians and whatnot. If you are an unpopular person, you can pay about $500,000 to a firm that will buy your loads of copies of your book in various different places to game the New York Times algorithm to make you a New York Times bestselling author. It costs about $500,000 on a good week, $1 million if there's another good book out. All the people who did this, who have burned through millions, are now all kind of like fading out of the conversation. So there's a big moment happening. And the reason I'm making such a big deal out of talking about this for so long is right now is the moment. If you are an up-and-coming or an enthusiastic conservative podcaster or a wannabe host, or you want to be somebody like Tim, or you want to be somebody like whatever, now is the moment, because there is a huge widening of the market at this exact point in time with Trump's election and with the fall and fade of all of the previous gatekeepers and kingpins. There is a massive opportunity right now and a huge empty space, a massive open playing field for you to just buy a Shure MV7 Plus, plug it into your laptop, get a simple camera, and become really big and really wealthy.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.